Tune in, log on, and get connected for your Florida AFL-CIO Legislative update. We're just 2 weeks into the 2021 legislative session, and we have already seen Florida's democratic system under siege from digital viruses attacking working Floridians' rights.
We have a zero bug attacking all login and overlay files.
Run antivirus. Give me a systems display.
Down below section 6 to 26. Nope, make that 10.
Florida's frontline workers have the right to decide whether or not they join a union. A slate of bills would put the government in between them and that right. Our frontline workers have put themselves at risk throughout the pandemic, and in response, Tallahassee is trying to gobble up their rights. House Bill 947, dues and uniform assessments, would interfere with our firefighters, teachers, and state workers' right to join a union.
So this is, as we have said multiple times, it is a layer of unnecessary bureaucratic red tape and confusion.
All this bill will do is make it harder for individuals to exercise their constitutional right to join their union.
This is the first time in the history of the state of Florida that the employer will essentially have control over the membership process through this new step of recertification.
HB 947 will make life harder for our frontline workers, having to rejoin our union yearly. We want to join. It's a personal decision, everyone's personal decision. We are a right-to-work state, and no one forces us to join the union.
First, I want to be clear as to what House Bill 947 is. It's a political attack on our public service workers. It's an attack on the very men and women we've relied on during the COVID-19 pandemic.
So share a concern as an active firefighter right now that part of our dues structure does include supplemental insurance, and I'm worried about a gap that can be caused during the reauthorization of our dues.
HB 947 passed the Government Affairs Committee and will continue on to the State Affairs Committee. HB 835 singles out K-12 educators in college and university instructors, enforcing similar but even harsher provisions.
So my question is, how do we explain this bill to our constituents? Well, you know, we just got to crack down on those teachers who've been our frontline workers.
We would argue that the signed membership form is the verification. Secondly, I heard get government out of the way. So we would argue that, again, this is a bill putting government in between an individual's rights to join or not join a union.
Over 80% of our faculty voted to join the union when our chapter, the last time we were certified. That isn't going to change. If many of them choose not to pay dues and exercise their right to work, I don't like it, but so be it. But the fact is, faculty want to do this. The unprecedented in the state of Florida and nationally, elimination of dues deduction speaks for itself because it is limited to teachers.
Look, I watched some TV over the weekend. I'm a cord cutter. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I saw TV. And I saw commercials. And there was all these commercials about, we've all pulled together for COVID. We've all pulled together, we've all worked together, and we're better for it. I never would have imagined after watching those commercials I would come to the Florida House and the teachers who have done so much for us during this pandemic would be getting kicked in the teeth right now.
HB 835 passed the Government Affairs Committee and will also continue on to the Education and Employment Committee. SB 78, the Senate clone of HB 947, was not heard. In the meantime, Florida's working people are calling their senators and representatives to tell them to stop these attacks on our teachers and other frontline workers. Digital operators are standing by. Call today and tell them to just say no to these attacks on Florida's frontline heroes. Florida's giant corporations are continuing their all-out assault on workers' rights with new legislation that would give blanket immunity to corporations that failed to keep frontline workers safe. Senate Bills 72 and 74 were combined to take away the right to hold negligent corporations and healthcare providers accountable when workers and customers fall ill with COVID-19.
Chair, this amendment is a combination of both the health care bill and the overall liability bill for COVID-19.
But I think that some of you, and I've talked to some of you, who view the business bill a little bit differently than the health care bill. And I think they should remain separate.
We believe this bill does. We're concerned about, from looking at the language from the perspective of an attorney, is that this would foreclose claims by businesses for business interruption coverage under insurance contracts.
So we're not opposed to some reasonable limitation on the liability. But then to say from that, well, we don't think your limitation is reasonable. So therefore, the answer is that everyone gets to take advantage of this liability, regardless of their history, regardless of anything that has occurred. I don't think that's the answer. I think that's a bridge too far to cross.
This nefarious combo was approved by the Senate Rules Committee 10-5. HB 7005, the House counterpart to SB 74, relating to negligent healthcare facilities, passed both the Pandemic and Public Emergency Committee and the Judiciary Committee.
I believe this bill essentially immunizes nursing homes and healthcare providers for anything that they've done. That's how broad this bill is. It's unfortunate that through this process we haven't made this bill better. I understand the purpose.
Before you vote on this disgusting bill, it's not going to help them, the residents, not going to help the workers on the front lines, only going to help the corporations, big business that owns nursing homes. I hope you will think about the people.
29, that's it.
I'll be right there.
The following material is for security clearance personnel only. It is a federal crime to use such material without proper authorization.
House Bill 1 would silence Floridians and crack down on their right to free speech.
The Florida Legislature is not the arbiter of free speech. We should not be. A common theme for me this legislative session is that we have got to be mindful of our guardrails. Our Constitution, our nation's Constitution, and our state's Constitution were put in place to be the guardrails within which we should operate. We have the First Amendment that gives us the right to free speech. It's not our job as the Florida Legislature to try to be the arbiter of that. HB 1, in addition, erodes the ability of the people to hold government accountable. There are specific references in the bill that criminalizes conduct that would try to get a person to abandon a position. To me, that's it's criminalizing any efforts that would try to make you think differently about something. And to me, that's very offensive to the notion of the First Amendment.
That I sent to you? Those 35 organizations represent several tens of thousands of environmentalists in Florida that oppose HB 1. Conservation organizations like ours work to inform you as decision makers and drive policy regarding environmental issues in Florida. We do that through a variety of ways. We rally, we protest, we march, we sign wave, and we gather in vigils to protect Florida's environment. HB 1 is not needed. Violence, destruction of property, and seditious acts are already prohibited by law. These bills threaten our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and assembly as tools for change. They would chill participation in marches and protests. These bills would undermine our ability to achieve our shared conservation goals, and as a result, would put at risk our very way of life. Members, we urge you to oppose HB 1 on behalf of the environment. Thank you for your time.
Dean Rao, and then Pippi Malone. You're recognized.
Good afternoon. I'm MUTAQEE AKBAR. I'm the president of the Tallahassee branch of the NAACP. We oppose this bill, mainly because it's interesting that the only response to the cries of millions of people to destroy systemic racism in the state of Florida is to silence the cries with this bill. And I can also speak, I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Tallahassee. I represent probably 12 of the 19 people that were arrested for the Title 19. So I can speak on the fiscal issues that we have here. If that number just doubled slightly, that would be 40 people that would have to represent those people. That would be first appearance required for each one of those people. That'll be a jail staff, that'll be beds, and if they can't afford that bond, they'll be sitting in jail until they're required to go to trial.
10 seconds.
In my case by itself, it's going to trial with 9 people, which is going to be logistically impossible and expensive for Leon County. So I ask you all to vote against this bill. Thank you.
House Bill 1 passed the Justice Appropriations Subcommittee 10-5 and the Judiciary Committee 14-7. While HB 1 seeks to fragment our constitutional right to freely assemble, HB 90 would de-res our right to vote, suppressing Floridians' right to vote by mail.
In my lifetime serving voters, I've seen the best and worst elections have to offer. This bill appears, from my perspective, to be setting us up for another 2012, where we had long lines and chaos and confusion.
This legislation is voter suppression. It impacts seniors, veterans, access to the ballot, people with disabilities, folks with health ailments, and also folks that are already marginalized, already have struggles to access the ballot. We don't see this legislation as establishing guardrails. We see this as running our car completely off a cliff.
If I were seeking to remodel my home, I would seek the services of an architect and a building contractor. I would not go ask my local dentist how to remodel my home. Sir, now in my role as the election supervisor of Lake County, I'm asking each member of the legislature to seek the opinions and take the advice of the elections professionals of the state of Florida before making significant changes and tinkering with our statutes.
We don't need to make obstacles for our voters. And we have voters here with different languages, with different issues, and we need to make sure that they're allowed to vote. And I think that many constituents across from the state, I've called my office, I sent emails, and not to support this bill, and I'll be honest, I can't support this bill now, and hopefully you may TP it sometime down the road, but that's up to you, sir.
HB 90 passed the Governmental Oversight and Accountability Committee 4-2. Once again, multi-billion-dollar interests are attempting to tighten their grip on Florida's economy on the backs of Florida's working people. Florida's unemployment system has failed out-of-work Floridians throughout the COVID pandemic. HB 15 would tax out-of-state internet sales, a long overdue change. Instead of using that revenue to help Florida's unemployed, it will go back into the pockets of big corporations.
We all know that the weekly benefit amount here in Florida is $275 a week, and that is one of the lowest in the country, and it's also grounded in the fact that our businesses pay some of the lowest taxes into the trust fund.
There's a lot of us that have been pushing for this change in the way that we collect sales and use taxes in Florida for a long time. I've been one of them. I have supported the underlying tax policy in this legislation for years. The reason that this change in tax policy hasn't passed is because some of the organizations behind me shot it down. Why now? Why now is this such a good idea? Why is everybody now on the train and, you know, let's support this and let's do it? Well, maybe it's because of the content of that strike all amendment. Because what that does, and I'm only speaking to the tax part of this, what this legislation is doing, it is increasing the out-of-pocket living expenses of your constituents to pay an insurance premium for a private company. It's that simple.
HB 15 passed the Ways and Means Committee 16-2.
Is this a game or is it real? What's the difference? Oh, wow.
From every corner of the Sunshine State, Florida's volunteer armies of digital activists are standing up to these attacks as part of the virtual Working Families Lobby Corps mainframe.
My name is Kimberly Holdridge. I represent thousands of entertainment craftspeople who live and work in the state of Florida with IATSE Local 631. The Working Family Lobby Corps is our opportunity to be in thoughtful conversation with our state legislators about the issues that matter most to us in our daily living. It brings us together to strive for legislation that makes sense for every Floridian across our fine state, providing a unification so that our voices can be heard loud and clear. Throughout the session, we have committee meetings and have an opportunity to share our experiences with each other and with other union families. I hope you'll join us. Working Family Lobby Corps, solidarity forever.
Join the Working Families Lobby Corps today. Florida's working families will continue to debug the viruses attacking the mainframe of our democracy. Log in next week for more updates from this year's legislative session.